So hey anime fans, the series name is What If Naruto Got Harem with One Piece? So let's start the series. Sitting in a bar someplace in Swallow Island was a young fellow in his mid-20s. He has faint shadows right under his yellow eyes, and his mouth is typically found in a grin. He has dim hair, a greater part of which is darkened, save for his sideburns and little goatee by the northern-style fur cap that he wears, which is white and has spots on the base and along the edge. The man has numerous ancestral-style tattoos and has the letter inked on every one of his fingers. He's the skipper of the Heart Privateer's Trafalgar Regulation. Taking a taste of his beverage, he contemplates internally, where would it be advisable for me I check for my next team part? As far as numbers, I'm behind a larger part of privateers. I have Beepo as my guide and a couple of others, however I'm actually missing a first mate. Returning the beverage on the stool, he hears somebody talk from one of the tables behind him. No doubt, he got another. This person's been taking privateers out left and right. He hears somebody say, an individual privateer. If he somehow managed to figure, he was unable to detect anything extraordinary about him, however, simply an ordinary privateer. From what I've heard, he just targets individuals with bounties higher than 100 million, another contributed. That helped him to remember the needed banners he'd seen grabbed before in the day. Hauling them out, he sees Straw Hat Luffy and privateer tracker Roronoa Zaro, both with bounties north of 100 million. Many have bounties that meet this person's models, even me at 200 million. He thinks while taking care of the banners. Still, for this person to be taking out privateers like that should mean serious areas of strength, for he was intriguing. He stood up and strolled over to their table where they were examining it. This abundance tracker you folks are discussing, where is he? They take a gander at him, unusually briefly, most likely attempting to sort out what his identity was prior to shrugging. He's here in North Blue. His last objective was at Follower Island about a day prior. Part of the gang answered. Last I heard, he's brought down 17 forthcoming privateers up until this point, all with bounties between 100 to 200 million. The insane thing is the majority of them were Fallen Angel natural product clients, said another of the folks. This person is bringing down Fallen Angel organic product clients by the bundle, huh? He contemplated internally prior to posing another inquiry. Does he have a name? He saw they simply alluded to him as an abundance tracker. It was the person who originally addressed who spoke. His genuine name is obscure, yet every individual who's known about him call him the Death Dealer. Hearing that name probably stood out in light of the fact that a man toward the finish of the bar where Regulation had been sitting talked straight away. The Death Dealer, I've known about him. Word is he has an ideal record in his chases. Not one of his objectives has figured out how to get away from him. He says prior to taking care of his bill and leaving, mumbling a speedy because of the folks at the table, he returned to his unique recognize in the bar. He sat ahead and laid his elbows on the wood. The Death Dealer, huh? This merits looking at. He thinks prior to leaving a few berry on the counter and leaving. He strolled for 10 minutes prior to showing up at the Heart Privateer's transport Polar Tang. Strolling inside, he was welcomed with 3 individuals. The first is Beepo, a white bear mink man. He wears an orange jumpsuit that bears the Heart Privateer's Happy Roger. He likewise wears little earthy colored boots and has sharp teeth and paws. He's the group's pilot. Next is a typical measured lean man with red hair that arrives at his shoulders. Similar to the next Heart Privateers, he wears a beige generally, with their carefree Roger showed on the back and the chest pocket, as well as earthy colored boots. He wears a blue cap with a red edge and is constantly seen wearing shades. There is likewise a tattoo situated on his lower arms. This is Shachi. At last, one more man wearing a similar way as Shachi, however his cap peruses Penguin on it. This is Penguin. Shachi, Penguin, he said, standing out. Go assemble the remainder of the team, we'll leave soon. They gestured prior to taking off. The skipper directed his concentration toward his guide and spoke. Beepo, direct us to Follower Island when they get back. Beepo gestured and arranged the boat, yet inquired. You are apparently in a hurry, skipper. What's happening? Regulation set his nodachi along the wall and laid back. I've heard something intriguing as of late. This might be the very thing I've been searching for, he replied and shut his eyes. After 30 minutes they were heading out. After 2 days, on Crony Island, in a somewhat vacant piece of the island, there were 2 occupants. However, only one was of significance as the other was presently dormant. He was a typical estimated young fellow of around 22. He had spiky light hair and wore all dark with the exception of his dim blue coat he had on. Dark jeans alongside with a basic dark undershirt. On his midriff was a dull blue sheath for a katana. "That is another down," the young fellow says as he hauls the sharp edge out of the monitor's back. The sharp edge itself is a customary bended cutting edge. The crossguard of the sword was in a level Z shape and the grip was likewise dim blue in a jewel design. Sheathing the sharp edge, he takes out a kneaded banner and draws a X through the picture. Moving it up, he takes care of it prior to bowing down to get the now dead privateer. "This is getting excessively simple," he said, tossing him behind him and leaving. It was just a 2-mile stroll before he made it into town. Checking out the frigid city, he at last found the closest marine abundance station. As he moved toward the structure, he saw a man resting against the side of the structure. He was in pants and a dark coat with his hood up. He watched out for him for one more second prior to going on with his day. It was just 10 minutes some other time when he arose, the body presently having a place with the Marines. He saw the man was still there, however hadn't moved an inch from where he had been. Not paying it any psyche, he counted his cash. He did as such as he strolling in a similar bearing where he had killed the last objective. 114 million, very great. Actually getting sort of exhausted, however, he protested to himself. He kept on strolling for an additional couple of moments before out of nowhere halting. In a matter of seconds he pivoted and had swung his katana in the air. The house closest to him started to go to pieces and in the residue he saw a shape move. I knew it, he thought. Somebody had been following him since he left the abundance station, and he had an inclination he knew what its identity was. When the residue cleared up, he figured out he was correct. It was a similar person balancing out beyond the abundance station. "Yo," the man expressed, a large portion of his face actually clouded by the hood. The main thing he could make out was a goatee. "Are you the one they call the death dealer?" The man addressed. "Depends, who needs to be aware?" The young fellow answered. He looked as the person pulled his hood down, uncovering a young fellow, perhaps a little while more established than him, with chaotic dark hair. "Trafalgar Regulation, also known as the Specialist of Death. Your head's worth 200 million berry, you know," the death dealer said, prior to adding, "Individuals as a rule trust one don't meet them, yet here you are coming directly to me. Why?" he asked as he laid a hand on his katana. "I caught wind of you taking out privateers with high bounties and that stood out. Then, at that point, I hear you muttering about beginning to get exhausted and thought this is wonderful as I have a suggestion for you," Regulation said. He watched the death dealer scowl. He obviously wasn't anticipating this. "What is it?" he asked gradually. He was keen on what Regulation needed to say, however was still had his hand on his cutting edge. "I need to track down the One Piece, yet to do that, I'll have to have major areas of strength for A to arrive," he expressed, following off. The man sneered as he probably was aware where this was going. "So you believe I should go along with you?" "Much obliged, yet I'll pass. I care very little about the One Piece. I need to fabricate my own fortune, not take another person's. I need to meet lovely ladies. Lastly, I need to battle the most grounded privateers on the planet and have them bow to me," he says as he pivots. "In the event that you leave now, I won't kill you at this time," he says prior to starting to leave. Yet again Regulation remains set up and called out. "Have you known about Don Quixote da Flamingo?" he asked tranquilly, having heard the monitor's objective made it simpler. "He's one individuals I intend to look en route. Most likely the Yonko will ultimately stand out also. You assist me with tracking down the One Piece as my most memorable mate, and consequently you get the best battles of your life. I'm certain you have associations so you can in any case capitalize on the bounties of individuals we face en route," Regulation said. "Sounds great, doesn't it?" he asked logically. He watched with a grin as the blondie considered his words. "It sounds very great," thought the light doffy, Whitebeard, Knifes, Kaido, Large Mother, the Marine Chiefs of Naval Operations. He went through in his mind. He permitted a little grin to beauty his face prior to stoning it and turning around to Regulation. He gestured his head back toward the town. "Follow me," he said prior to strolling off. The two strolled into a thoroughly stocked bar and sat along the back at a vacant table. The blondie motioned the barkeep to get him a beverage under the watchful eye of gesturing to Regulation to get him one too. When their beverages showed up, he paused for a moment and took a taste. "So," he He started, "What number of individuals you got in your team, not including yourself?" "Right now I have around 7, Regulation responses, trusting it will not prevent the man. "Any remarkable characters?" the blondie inquired. "Likely not. Assuming I did, there's an opportunity they'd currently be on your rundown," Regulation replied. That got a laugh out of the abundance tracker. "So what's your arrangement?" he followed up. "Make a beeline for Sabaody Archipelago to restock on provisions. After that, get a couple more individuals and go to the New World," Regulation told him. He gestured it was smart. Just boneheads would go into the New World ill-equipped. "He has a fair arrangement and it has been getting exhausting recently. The fights I could have en route and the bounties of the most grounded privateers has a specific enticement for me. On the off chance that we find the One Piece and I beat the most grounded, my name will stand out forever," he contemplated internally. "Okay, Regulation, you have yourself a first mate," he said, broadening his hand. Regulation took it. "Great, let's get moving," he said as they leave the bar. They stroll to the docks where the Polar Tang is docked. The blondie whistled at seeing the enormous submarine. "You know, whether anything turns out badly while we're submerged mixed together, you and I are dead," he remarks, procuring a chuckle from his new skipper. They enter and are met with the remainder of the group. Bippo, Shachi and Penguin were there as well as some others. "Yo, I am Uzumaki Naruto. You folks presumably know me as the Death Dealer. Seems as though we're crewmates now," Naruto welcomed under the steady gaze of he went to Regulation. "So where do I remain on this sub?" "Along these lines," the skipper said, passing on the group to talk. They looked apprehensive. Regulation took him to an unfilled room with just a bed inside. "This will be your room," he told him. Naruto gestured and tossed his pack of berry from his abundance on the bed and furthermore tossed his edge. "Before we take off, let me get a portion of the stuff I have on this island," Naruto told him prior to passing on the team to themselves. They watched him leave through the top and close the metal cover prior to focusing on their chief. "Commander, are you crazy?" Shachi inquired. "I had heard a few tales about this person, yet made them look like simply a few bits of gossip, and you really brought him here?" He progressed forward quickly. "Imagine a scenario in which he attempts to kill you in your rest?" asked Penguin. "Their interests are legitimate. A portion of individuals here that saw him say that he goes for privateers with high bounties. You're worth 200 million, Bippo tells him. "It's fine," Regulation answered without any problem. "Assuming he needed me dead, he'd have done it the second he got onto me following him. He's keen on serious areas of strength for battling and realizes this is the most effective way for him to do as such," he expresses. Looking into he sees they're not altogether persuaded yet. That should have been normal. "Well, on the off chance that you say as much," Penguin said, "what is his power in any case?" He follows up. "Yet again, I'm not completely certain," Regulation answers. "He's gifted with a sword, as he was effectively ready to cut up a house with no issue. Yet to the extent that his demon natural product, I don't have any idea," he replied. As he did, he heard the lock open and in came the fare. This time he was conveying a significantly greater pack. Seeing the gazes, he replied, "It's all the abundance cash I've gathered. I wasn't going to leave without it," he said as he went to take care of it. When he returned, Regulation concluded the time had come to get to know their most current part. "In this way, what's your demon organic product power?" Regulation asked, focused. Naruto grinned. "I ate the Yorionomi," he replied. "It was anything but an organic product they knew about. It's a paramecia type that permits me to impeccably work out unquestionably the deadly portion of anything I consume, the sum that will cause demise as a general rule." He uncovered, partaking in the look that ran over their face as they understood what he could do. "I can then raise or lower that worth as I see fit, which will cause a deadly dose of anything I desire. For instance, if I somehow happened to battle our commander here and consumed enough of his blood, I could then diminish the deadly measurement in his body, making his own blood lethal to him. Comprehend?" he inquired. They gestured, presently understanding the reason why he was serious areas of strength for so. It seemed okay why he was alluded to as the Death Dealer. "That is an unnerving skill," Bippo remarked, moving past his shock. He thought his commander had areas of strength for yet this was something different. "Isn't it?" Naruto concurred. "There's another side to it, however, that is the fundamental thought," he told them. "Heh, I knew adding you to the group was really smart," Regulation remarked. "Okay, Bippo, How about we head to Sabayati, he told the guide. They lowered and took off. It was a really predictable excursion. Beepo was guiding while the others were attempting to be tactful about watching out for the main mate. About an hour into the excursion, Beepo talked. "Chief, we have 3 naval force transports straight in front of us," he said. Regulation turned upward and planned to recommend to simply jump further, yet he had another thought. "Surface, we'll manage them." Naruto immediately went to get his sharp edge prior to returning. Getting in line, he took her up and immediately broke the surface. They were straightforwardly before the boats. Regulation and Naruto ventured outside and immediately filtered individuals. Not even one of them were of any genuine danger. "So how would you like to manage them?" Naruto requested that, overlooking their orders, give up. "I need to see what you can do," Regulation addressed, glancing back at him. Okay then," he said prior to bouncing forward onto their boat. When he hopped, they terminated their cannonballs. He effortlessly cut the parcel of them with his edge, sending them off kilter. Arriving on the stern of the middle boat, he started playing with the Marines. He immediately cut one across the chest before kicking the one behind him over the edge. He leaped to the side to keep away from a shot prior to hurrying the man. He kneed him in the stomach prior to scaling him toward the back and dropping him. Investigating, he saw the Marines focusing on him. Hopping up high, he immediately let off 3 cuts, and they looked as the boat cut into 3 even pieces prior to sinking into the sea. Having successfully brought down 2, he got around to the last boat and stopped in the middle. The Marines were all seeing him in apprehension about what he could do, however, nobody appeared to need to withdraw. Regulation had gotten some margin to bounce onto the boat too to obviously see the activity. "You're daring, I'll give you that. In view of that, you won't wind up in the sea like your kindred Marines," Naruto said. "Gift terrible," he said. Regulation looked as a dark pool-like substance showed up on the floor of the boat. He watches in interest as the whole team simply fall over. They're alive yet they're unconscious. "Damn," he remarked as Naruto halted the strategy. "What was that?" he inquired. "One of my strategies. I brought their opposition down to nitrogen, seeing as it's a crucial piece of air they dropped because of me bringing their obstruction down to it," he made sense of. It was one thing to have it made sense of, yet watching it was something different. Beepo was correct. "That is alarming," he said as they made a beeline for their boat. Our group's solidarity just went up," he thought joyfully. Their possibilities enduring the new world had quite recently gone up immensely. The team had at last come to Sabayati Archipelago. After the occurrence with the naval force, they ran into next to zero difficulty. It took them a week and a half to arrive at the spot, yet they made it. In the time it took them to arrive, the group had gotten used to their blondie groupmate. They were as yet careful around him, however, since their commander believed him, they would allow him an opportunity. The abrupt stop of the sub let them in on that they were prepared to surface. Beepo took them up, and soon enough they were going outside. Naruto glanced around in surprise at how tall the trees were, as well as every one of the air pockets that encompassed the spot. He looked to the closest tree and perused Woods 20 in white lettering. Venturing onto the island, the team started strolling. They strolled peacefully, taking everything in for a couple of moments prior to acknowledging something. "There's no one here," Regulation said as he took a gander at a portion of the structures. They were beat down and seemed as though they hadn't been involved by any occupants in some time. They kept strolling further into the trees under the watchful eye of both Naruto and Regulation, drawing consideration from the remainder of the team. The two of them gazed toward a similar time. "Hello, that's what you feel?" Naruto asked his chief. "Definitely." When Regulation answered, 13 men showed up from on the tree limbs. "Ha, appears as though we got one. Young men, your abundance is mine," one of them shouted as he bounced down, his edge up high, the rest trailing behind. Regulation lifted his hand, palm confronting the ground, and a white circle started turning prior to extending significantly. "Room," he expressed serenely as a light blue vault immediately showed up around the encompassing region. Each of the 13 abundance trackers were inside the arch. Naruto peered down to see a piece of wood close to his foot. He kicked the piece very high in bearing of one of the abundance trackers. The man just shifted his head, allowing it to cruise past him. "Regulation," Naruto called out. In a moment the blondie vanished from his spot and was supplanted with the wood. He returned behind the man and immediately cut the man up into 3 pieces. Ordinarily this is where he would have passed on, yet rather the pieces recently started drifting about. Regulation unsheathed his nodachi and made a few fast-cutting minutes prior to sheathing his weapon. Everybody was presently something like drifting body parts in Regulation's room. I found out about this strategy when I was exploring you, yet seeing it in person is significantly more noteworthy, Naruto remarks as he watches Regulation make roundabout movements with his hands. The body parts start associating with various ones, and some were in any event, adhering to the trees and encompassing things. "Hello, stop, that is my leg," one hollered. "That is my arm, what are you doing?" One more hollered as he watched his leg be gone after to where the head of another person should be. The remainder of the team watched with wide eyes as their group mates took care of them. Don't like anything. The trackers didn't actually come to the ground. Regulation dropped the procedure and was going to continue to walk when he saw Naruto approach one of the bodies. The blondie saw a couple of bits of earthy colored paper standing out of the pockets of part of the gang. He immediately grabbed them and looked at them. "Needed banners," he considerations as he rearranged through them. "I couldn't say whether you were their primary objective, however you're one of them without a doubt," he remarked as he holds up Regulation's needed banner. He checks out at the rest with a computing eye. "I perceive everyone on this rundown, pause, this one's unique," he thinks as he looks at more than a guide of the archipelago. Sweet, he discarded the banners while keeping the guide. "So forests 1 to 29 are a rebellious region," Regulation says as he peruses the notes on the guide. "The provisions will be in woods 40 then," he adds. They gesture and head on their way. After that first starting assault, they were just trapped once again and settled it with basically no trouble on their part. After around 20 minutes of strolling, they at long last shown up at woods 40 in the wake of having passed by the carnival. There were brilliant lights and a lot of individuals approaching their day dissimilar to where they had shown up. "Well, we're most certainly perfectly positioned," Naruto remarked as he glanced around. "Everything from fishmen to things I haven't seen before are here," he added in the wake of seeing a blue clean man cruise by. "We're above Fishman Island, so that is likely why there are some fishmen here," Regulation told him. Naruto was going to say something different when his stomach thundering halted him. "On second thought, I haven't had a dinner in around 10 hours, Naruto said as he searched for a spot to eat. Beepo and the others mumbled in understanding. "I could go for some food myself," Regulation said as he strolled forward. Not excessively far away was a respectable-looking eatery, and on the off chance that the smell coming from it was any sign, it was fairly great. They were situated close to the rear of the cafe and were given canapes. As Naruto was taking in the climate, he saw 4 individuals who hung out in the structure. The first was a more seasoned-looking man encompassed by a couple of others wearing comparative suits to his remaining behind him as he ate. He is a diminutive man with a stocky form whose appearance is to some degree like that of a mafia chief. He sports an oiled-up and slicked-back hairdo befitting that of a wrongdoing, where his facial elements have an exceptionally harsh focus on them, further emphasized by his fairly sharp, however snaring snout-like nose. He additionally has 5 o'clock stubble on his upper lip. He wears a highly contrasting pinstriped clothing, complete with a green scarf around his neck, with the overabundance tucked inside the suit. He is Capone Posse Beach, commander of the fire tank privateers. His head is worth 138 million berry. Corner to corner from him was a tall, solid man with fair skin and dazzling red hair, looking like flares. His nose has a specific shape, being very pointed and having little bulges on the 2 sides. He has dull rosy purple-hued lips and fingernails, red/orange eyes and no eyebrows. His clothing comprises of dark and yellow reptile print pants with a red periphery, bike boots, and a blue scarf added to a green repertoire secured by an enormous roundabout clasp with a Lucky Charm-like example in the center. He likewise has a thin bandolier, likewise with microscopic bolts that go slantingly over his right shoulder, then connections to his midriff. He is Eustace Commander Youngster. His head is worth 315 million berry. The following one was a female who was at present sitting on the table with numerous plates piling up at a quick speed. Her outfit comprises of a white low-profile tank top that uncovered both her midsection and cleavage, alongside some orange and dark striped clasped shorts with long, meager suspenders. She additionally wears dark high-abade boots which arrive at dependent upon her calves, with enormous bands coming from the openings, and a couple of sweltering pink and dim red stockings with a yellow sun-like theme on them. The cap she wears is a green Furizerka with a light green coating. She has an enemy of eyebrow beneath her right eye. dazzling red lipstick all the rage, and is some of the time seen wearing a brown furred coat. She has long pink hair and purple eyes. She goes by Gems Bonnie, chief of the Bonnie privateers. Her head is worth 140 million berry. At last was a man with unquestionably lengthy arms, that and he had 2 elbow joints on each arm. He wears a bunch of orange earphones with his name on one or the other side over his ears and hairdo like Jabras, where the hair on his scalp has been pulled firmly so his foundations look like lightning designs. A red Chinese clothing with Team's Chipper Roger at the focal point of an enormous blossom-like print spread across the chest region, as well as on his back. He likewise has a yellow scarf around his midriff. He is Scratchmanopus, skipper of the on-air privateers. His head is worth 198 million berry. While that makes sense of all the abundance trackers here, regulation says as he started eating the food that was brought to them. Completing his nibble, he added, "This spot is creeping with high abundance privateers. You'd have been in paradise here assuming you were still an abundance tracker." The Heart privateers weren't the ones in particular who saw this either. Eustace ate a piece of meat and addressed his team, however he talked clearly enough for generally everybody to hear him. 3 major names in a single spot. 10 of us all out here with bounties north of 100 million, he said, not perceiving who Apu was. There should be 18 more, addressed to Apu. Eustace checked out at him briefly prior to inquiring, "Who on earth are you?" discourteously. Naruto made a move to spread the word. Scratmanapu, otherwise called the Ocean Thunder, he likewise has an abundance north of 100 million, so that would make it 11 on the island, he told Eustace prior to going to Apu. Likewise, the other 18 will not be making it here or to the New World, he informed him. "No doubt?" asked an aggravated Eustace. "How might you be aware? On second thought, who on earth would you say you are as well? I perceive regulation close to you, yet I have no clue about what your identity is," he said. Right now he definitely stood out of both Capone and Bonnie, the last option of which was all the while eating. First mate of the Heart privateers, Uzumaki Naruto, no abundance, he presented, youngster, alongside a larger part of the privateers in the room started snickering wildly at this. Regulation and Naruto both let a little sneer run over their countenances. These folks couldn't really understand. At long last, having returned himself to normal, Eustace shouted out once more, "No abundance. No big surprise, I haven't known about you, that is no joke," he said while standing up. "I ought to simply kill you now and save you the difficulty of winding up dead in the New World." Not the least bit staged by youngster Naruto took a taste of his beverage and answered, "Gee, maybe you might know me by my other name." He stopped for impact. "Have you known about the Death Dealer?" Anybody who might have still been chuckling from before quickly shut up. Every one of the 4 commanders' eyebrows in the room had raised somewhat. "Okay, so you have known about me?" he asked without holding back. He turned his consideration stringently to youngster and said, "The explanation they will not be showing up is on the grounds that I'm the one that killed them." Apo's eyes were the one in particulars who were up in dismay. He knew about the man, however trusted the stories to be a misrepresentation. Most abundance trackers were low-level wannabes except for a couple of like Roronoa Zoro. Presently he comprehended the reason why he didn't have an abundance on his head. Outside the cafe, both the occupants of Sabaody and travelers the same were staying out of other people's affairs when unexpectedly the wall detonated. Out of the smoke Naruto leaped out and remained in 2 or 3 structures. Setting his hands in his pockets he moaned as he truly ought to have seen something like this coming. Capone, Bonnie, and Apu likewise bounced outside. However, they remained out of the way, intrigued by what might occur. Regulation excessively joined as he brought his food outside and sat on a wooden container. It was one thing to watch him battle low-level marines and abundance trackers, yet this sounds seriously fascinating. "Really, you ought to stop before you wind up dying, youngster," Naruto cautioned. "You charlatan!" Youngster shouted out of frustration as he scowled at the fare. "One of the privateers you as of late killed was a witness of mine. You figured out how to hamper me a lot, and for that you will kick the bucket," he said as he utilized his villain organic product powers to draw any metal items towards him. Firearms, blades, salvaged material all started assembling at youngster's hand as he raised it as high as possible. Naruto looked as the metal started appearing as a monster hand that started plummeting upon him. He effectively evaded the primary hit, allowing it to make a major pit in the ground prior to bouncing over a swipe. He kept on hopping, duck, and evade the swipes prior to attracting his cutting edge to redirect bits of sharp salvaged material going after him. Would it be a good idea for us we assist him with captaining? Asked Beepo. Nah, he'll be fine, answered their skipper coolly. Seems as though he won't stop. Should get my name out there. Kickoff, he thought prior to bouncing and allowing himself to get hit with a hard swipe by the metal clench hand. He was sent flying face first into a structure. It imploded not long after covering him in rubble. Ha 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 ha. Youngster snickered as he deactivated his powers, permitting all the metal to drop. Teaches you a lesson. Bonnie took a nibble of her pizza and spoke. Seems as though you will require another first mate regulation. He's presumably dead. Seems to be those tales about him were simply reports, all things considered. Regulation says only is watching the rubble through marginally restricted eyes. Yet again I know that is sufficiently not to take you out. What are you doing? He thought. He was right as bits of the structure started moving before a hand showed up. Eustace glared from his perspective and permitted a power to accumulate at his hand, prepared to enact his power. The blondie stood up, blood dribbling down from his brow. They watch in disdain as he makes a cup with his hand under his jaw and allows the blood to gather prior to drinking it. What in the world? Asked Youngster, expressing out loud whatever everybody was thinking. Everybody's short regulation in the heart privateers, that is, permits me to impeccably work out unquestionably the deadly portion of anything I consume, the sum that will cause demise as a general rule, he reviewed the blondie saying when he joined. Did you truly feel that would be sufficient to kill me, youngster? Naruto asked logically. Well, it doesn't make any difference, simply realize your passing is inescapable starting here on, he said. I've brought down your body's deadly portion resistance in your blood framework, he made sense of. The vast majority of the onlookers were considering what he was referring to since they hadn't seen him do anything. What are you referring to? Youngster inquired. It's a unique capacity of my villain organic product. All you really want to know is that the blood coursing through your veins is bringing you increasingly close to death, the blondie said. Kid coarseness his teeth as he felt his body begin becoming more vulnerable. He wasn't moronic. He realized the blondie wasn't lying since he was feeling the impacts. On the off chance that my body's resistance was diminished, I should simply lose a little blood then, he thought as he went after his blade. Yet again he hauled it out and ready to cut himself in the stomach with it, yet was halted as his rival made some noise. I can read your mind. You're believing you're about to cut yourself and lower your blood. Sad to report, however, it is quite difficult, Naruto said before he investigated Youngster. A man of your height seems to be around 95 kilograms. The surmised proportion of blood per kg is around 65-7 milliliters of blood for every kg of weight, so you have approximately 6 liters of blood in your body, Naruto started, regulation being the doctor he is gestured in understanding. He was deep down dazzled by the blondie's information on the human body. However, I surmise with his power it would be to his greatest advantage, he thought. Assuming you lose half of that, for this situation 3 liters, you'll pass on from blood misfortune. On top of that, the deadly portion your body can deal with, I've chosen, is 2 liters, he said, cherishing the wide-peered toward look of dread on Youngster in every other person's eyes. I know you're not quite as moronic as you look, but rather I'll explain it for you in any case. Possibly you'll pass on from blood misfortune, or you'll be killed by your own blood circling through your veins. It was as of now that Youngster hacked up a touch of blood and tumbled down face first. His group immediately came to his guide. Each privateer who had seen the fight watched in both trepidation and stunningness. Youngster had the most elevated abundance of all and was in no way, shape, or form feeble, and had been beaten don't like anything. So that is the reason they call him the Death Dealer, Capone said as he enjoyed a drag on his stogie. He'd lie in the event that he said he wasn't in any way, shape, or form stressed over this man. The specialist of death and the Death Dealer started a oath that is a ludicrously unnerving blend, he said as he cleaned his temple. He hadn't even acknowledged he'd started perspiring. Naruto approached the brought-down type of Youngster, disregarding the man's team. Try not to stress, Youngster, you'll live. I simply believe you should know how effectively I might have killed you as I so wished. So he turned and saw that the staff had all left the cafe. Damn, must go eat elsewhere. The group stood up and started heading for another cafe. As regulation strolled by Youngster, he spoke, and after so much grandiose talk inside, He followed off marginally. This happens when you race into a battle without an arrangement. Saying his piece, he strolled close to Naruto as they left. Individuals observing all started mumbling to themselves about what they had quite recently seen. They looked as youngster got up and scowled at both Regulation and Naruto as they left. He made a guarantee to himself that he'd kill the two of them in the new world. You realize you've recently made us foes of the youngster privateers, Regulation said with an entertained tone. Better believe it, yet it's nothing we can't deal with. They were at that point a potential foe in any case, Naruto answered. Gee, so that was one more of your fallen angel natural product capacities, Regulation expressed more than inquired. Better believe it, it's one of the more grounded ones, the blondie answered. So then experiencing a chief of naval operations will not be an over-the-top issue then? He inquired. No, it'll in any case be an issue. That capacity just deals with paramecia and Zoan-type clients as well as customary non-villain organic product contenders, he made sense of. This is the very thing Regulation was keen on. This power appeared to be excessively great to not have a few cutoff points. Logia clients can change their body into a component, changing the idea of their whole body, so while it would deal with a Kiji or a Kainu, it won't chip away at somebody like Kizaru. Controlling the measurements of blood is more troublesome than some other substance, so it takes more time. I had the option to do it to youngster since he was haughty. A naval commander wouldn't give me sufficient opportunity to make it happen, not as I'm currently at any rate. The one in particular who might let me would likely be Kizaru, wondering for no specific reason except for he's the one it won't deal with. He told him as they entered somewhere else. I realized there would need to be a few major disadvantages. He'd be relentless if he would get it done to anybody. Regulation idea, stand by, he said as he put a hand up. Look, they glanced through the window and saw Roronoa Zoro strolling straightforwardly into a divine mythical serpent's way. Gracious, this will be great, Naruto said as he anxiously watched. The group looked as Zoro halted before the divine winged serpent, who had an irritated look all over. Naruto saw that the chubby man was remaining close to a binded man who looked half dead as of now and had ladies fastened at the neck. He glared. They like to paint us as the miscreants, yet the Marines permit poo like this to occur. Fakers, he says indignantly. Regulation raised an eyebrow. You got an individual issue with the divine winged serpents? He asked inquisitively. No doubt I disdain them. Take a gander at them. He movements to the monitor's head inside their little air pocket since they can't be tried to inhale our air. It's really awful they can't be contacted. Beppo remarked. The second somebody challenges them, the naval force will have a naval commander here instantly, he said. Yeah, we can't contact them, Naruto said as he saw the man was eating a frozen custard. Back external Zoro inquired as to whether he really wanted bearings. The man was stunned and immediately raised his brilliant firearm and pointed it at the privateer. Anybody with any perception abilities saw Roronoa sneer and prepare to strike. He will make it happen, said Regulation, an engaged grin gradually crawling onto his face. They watch him avoid the disasters terminated and haul his cutting edges out of their sheath. Similarly, as he planned to go for the killing blow, they looked as he was handled to the ground by Gems Bonnie. While everybody was engrossed watching what was happening outside, Naruto immediately grabbed a gelato from a server that was close by, speedy enough not to be taken note. We'll not get an opportunity like this again, will we? He murmured to himself. He didn't realize that Beppo had heard him. Looked as the hefty man pivoted to leave while keeping on eating his pastry. The second the man completed the cone, Naruto immediately brought down the frozen yogurt and checked out at the withdrawing mythical serpent with a malevolent look all over. Did you just? Beppo asked and followed off. I will bring down it gradually over the course of the day. I ensure this much, however. Toward the finish of today, the world will have one less poop hole, he expresses, laughing as they eat. After their dinner, they left the structure and the team examined what supplies should have been gotten. I will go look at a drugstore I saw some time back, Regulation said. Beppo, Shachi, and Penguin would go along with him. While I will go to Sabayati Park and see what I can do, Naruto said. Okay then, at that point, we'll meet back here in 90 minutes, Regulation told them, and they headed in their own bearings. It didn't take him excessively lengthy to arrive at the recreation area, and the principal thing that stood apart to him was a sure man. He was wearing a red vest with an earthy colored straw cap. Monkey D. Luffy, 300 million berry abundance scarcely beneath youngster, he shared with himself. Had he actually been an abundance tracker, he would have gone after without even a moment's pause. He shrugged and went on with his business. Except if regulation needed him dead, he'd live. I never suspected I'd be taking requests from somebody. Beneficial thing I'm not prideful, he pondered internally prior to glancing around. He didn't need to search for long as he saw an appealing, more seasoned lady sitting without anyone else on a seat. He grinned brilliantly. It should be my big chance to shine, he thought as he moved toward her. His karma with ladies was still great, as after an hour the two ended up sharing a beverage as he paid attention to her enlighten him regarding herself. He was listening her enlighten him regarding how adaptable she was, the point at which he heard something rather intriguing. It was thanks to his time hunting that he had the option to get the discussion. We want to make a beeline for the human sales management firm. I heard they're selling a Goliath and a mermaid, part of the gang murmured. Absolutely not a chance. What time? The other inquired. It begins at 4 o'clock. Naruto squinted his eyes. This spot sold individuals and fishmen like it was a customary event. Similar to it was all right. That is fascinating, Naruto told the lady. Well, sorry to stop this, darling, however I need to go. On the off chance that I'm around again before long, I'll find you, he told her before he made a beeline for their get-together spot. A disgrace. This one seemed as though she was one of the wild ones. At the point when he returned to the get-together spot, he saw that the team had previously assembled. Trust they hadn't been standing by lengthy. They saw him and regulation gestured to him in a particular bearing and started strolling. We're going to Forest One, he said as he made up for lost time to them. I found out about a closeout and needed to look at it, he made sense of. I was going to let you know exactly the same thing. Beppo saw that Naruto was the only one of them who had nothing on him and got some information about it. Goodness, I invested my energy with this dazzling lady I met at the recreation area, he addressed cheerfully. The group sweat dropped. Of the multitude of things he might have been doing, he chosen to invest his time hitting on ladies. In any case, I heard a few people talking and obviously they're selling a mermaid and a Goliath. That is by all accounts what has individuals energized, he told them. Individuals around here disdain the fishmen and merfolk, he told them as they strolled. On the off chance that they truly have a mermaid, I would not be surprised. On the off chance that the divine winged serpents appeared, they generally strolled peacefully. Starting thereon, they came to the sale house as everybody was showing up. Large numbers of these individuals were more established and no doubt some kind of respectable. They strolled inside and sat practically in the focal point of the columns towards the left side, assuming you're peering down from the entry. Regulation and Naruto sat down with the remainder of the group being one line behind them. Beppo even clutched Regulation's Nodachi for him. As they trusted that the closeout will start, they heard a man and a lady talking about the thing they were hoping to get. One was on the lookout for a monster, whereas the elderly person was attempting to get some beautiful sight. These individuals are wiped out, Beppo said unobtrusively. Shows how degenerate the Marines are. On the off chance that they deliberately ignore this, Regulation says sluggishly. The seats started topping off quick, and as Naruto was seeing who was here, he felt an elbow to the ribs. Investigating, he saw Regulation gesture someplace toward the path behind them. Turning his body around, he saw that, there, close to the entry, were the youngster privateers. They were taking a gander at the two divine winged serpents that had quite recently shown up and were advancing down. Divine mythical beasts, slaves, human shops. When individuals in power act this savage and avaricious, it makes normal crooks like us look pretty altruistic by correlation. When filth like that are the ones composing the guidelines, it makes more rubbish, youngster said. They disdain privateers, yet they're the ones who made them. Basically tell the truth about being terrible individuals, right, executioner? He asked his most memorable mate. Seems like he feels the manner in which we do to some degree, to a certain extent, Regulation said. They looked as one of his group individuals spotted them and told his commander. Youngster focused on them and glared. As yet being irritated about what had unfolded before, he got significantly angrier when he saw Regulation sneer and flip him off. Kid started to stroll forward, however, was come by executioner. Loosen up, commander. In the event that we create a situation, the divine mythical beasts will blow up. And in the event that we effectively furious them, the naval force will convey a chief of naval operations, he expressed, dissuading his hot-headed skipper. Tisk, just both of you stand by, youngster expressed irately as he took one final second to frown at them prior to dismissing. At long last the bartering started, and the first to be sold was a male slave, trailed by a bunch of male slaves. They were truly selling individuals like they were a pack of pop. After those two, Disco reported that the following was a lady. She was by all accounts rather youthful, maybe in her mid-20s, and was dressed like a housekeeper in a green and white outfit. Naruto heard a similar more seasoned man from the very outset saying how this one was his. He hears Disco notice how she could cook, clean, and great at an endless assortment of games. Regulation, Naruto calls. The man looked at him. She doesn't appear as though she's from Sabaody, does she? No, assuming I needed to bet, I'd say she's been captured. That is typically the way in which individuals end up here, he answered. Naruto looked as she took a gander at everybody with scared eyes before her eyes met his, and she mouthed, "If it's not too much trouble, help me." The group heard the offers start at 600,000 the entire way to 3 million berry by the elderly person. The number of individuals that does the polar tang hold? Naruto asked unexpectedly. The group took a gander at him and saw he hadn't removed his eyes from the young lady. Moreover, she was all the while arguing for help. Regulation had a thought of what he was doing, yet answered, "In any case, it'll hold a whole group of more than 25 individuals. In the event that she's not from around here and has nowhere to go, how might you feel about adding somebody for some time? In the event that she has a family someplace, we can simply drop her off," he asked, stunning the team individuals. Regulation moans. "For a dreaded privateer executioner, you appear to have significantly more sympathy than you let on." "Go on," he told him. "Additional bidders?" Disco called out uproariously. 3,500,000 berry. Naruto hit out, holding up the number that was under his seat. Everybody went to see him, including the privateers, who appeared to be similarly as stunned to hear him make a bid on an individual. 4,000. The elderly person started before Naruto cut him off, offering 5 million. The elderly person coarseness his teeth prior to standing up and shouting out 10 million berry. He went to check out at Naruto with an egotistical articulation. 11 million, Naruto countered smoothly. He had brought down various privateers worth north of 100 million. This was nothing to him. The old monitor's mouth dropped in shock that he'd been out-offered and looked as Disco moved around cheerfully. "Additional offers?" he asked prior to throwing his hammer down on the wood. "She's yours, number 44, for 11 million berry," he hollered uproariously. Naruto looked as she moaned a breath of alleviation, realizing she wouldn't be shipped off an elderly person. She currently trusted that he'd be thoughtful to her. Much to her dismay, assuming she was from here, she'd be set free soon. Before long, one more female and a privateer skipper were available to be purchased, in which the privateer commander chose to stay quiet than to be taken as slave. As he was being tended to, they heard an entryway opening and another divine winged serpent strolling in. It was a similar one from recently. Naruto felt a bump on his shoulder. "I thought you were killing him?" Beepo inquired. "I'm actually going to. I've been bringing his obstruction down to dairy gradually over the course of the day. I'll off in just before we leave," he replied. The fundamental fascination had at last showed up, and to a great many people's awe, it was a mermaid. Naruto reviewed. She was the very individual that he'd momentarily seen with straw cap recently. The offers didn't actually get to start, as the second she went at a bargain, the fat divine winged serpent bid 500 million berry. Despite the fact that there was nobody to contend, Disco inquired as to whether there were some other bidders. When he was finishing the exchange, the entryways exploded. After the dust settled up, they saw Luffy shout for his companion prior to hurrying down the steps. "This'll be fascinating," Regulation said as he watched the situation develop. Tragically, his companion attempted to keep him down, yet in the process uncovered an additional 4 arms, permitting everybody to realize he was a fishman. The group overreacted and started tossing things at him before the divine winged serpent that purchased the mermaid shot him. The one they called Hachi moved down a couple of sets of steps prior to halting. Luffy started strolling towards his objective before a hand snatched him. Is he truly going to kill a divine mythical beast before everybody? Naruto pondered internally as Hachi attempted to work Luffy out of it. Briefly it seemed as though he was effective, until the chubby man fixed his destiny by letting him know he was irritating and was prepared to shoot him once more. That was the straw that broke the camel's back as Luffy approached him, avoiding the disasters as he discharged. He pulled his hand back and punched him so hard he shot into the group up a couple of stairwells. It was totally quiet. Everybody couldn't completely accept that what they had recently seen. Both Youngster and Regulation grinned as they also could hardly imagine how he was sufficiently insane to go after that way. "You!" shouted the other divine winged serpent. "You dare contact my child?" He hollered as he too took out a firearm and started taking shots at Luffy. The room ejected into alarm as everybody less the privateers started emptying. Indeed, that 300 million berry abundance was most certainly very much acquired, Regulation said as watched from his seat not trying to empty. "That straw cap is one insane jerk," Youngster told Executioner. The straw caps started battling with the gatekeepers while attempting to safeguard their mermaid companion. "We want to hustle before the naval force appears," one of them shouted. "Hello Stahot," Regulation calls out. Luffy goes to him with a confounded look. "The naval force is now here." Luffy asked what his identity was, however was disregarded as the specialist spoke. "They'd been here from before the bartering even started. I don't have the foggiest idea who they needed yet. I question they anticipated that somebody should punch a divine winged serpent," he said. He then let out a little snicker prior to adding, "That was a fascinating show you folks gave." Naruto anyway blocked everybody out for searching for holy person Charlos as he presently realized he was designated. "Damn, in the event that I kill him, Straw Cap will presumably get the kudos for it. Damn everything," he reviled before he detected areas of strength for an of hockey. Taking a gander at the source, he saw a more seasoned looking man who any privateer good for anything would be aware. "Well, I'll be cursed," he mumbled. Silvers Rayleigh strolled forward serenely to check what is happening out. For an elderly person, he's still areas of strength for absurdly thought and wonder. In the event that he wasn't dazzled, then he was subsequent to watching the man eliminate the slave collar from the young lady with his exposed hands. Not long after, the skeleton from the Straw Cap group gave the slaves the keys to the collars and set them free. "Well, that saved me 11 million berry," he told himself as he saw the young lady leave. "You should be generally serious areas of strength for unbelievably endure that," Silvers commended. "I never expected to meet such a top dog." Dole ruler Silvers Rayleigh, "What's an unbelievable man is you doing here?" he inquired. Before they could talk, everybody heard the voice of the Marines outside address them. "Okay hoodlums, discharge the Roswacht family on the double. A naval commander will show up in practically no time. I recommend you turn yourselves in," they said. In addition to the fact that we made up for lost time, men are this, however, were being dealt with like associates. Regulation expresses not the least bit staged. "Well, I got to see Straw Cap accomplish something insane, so there's that. Yet I'd prefer not to run into a naval commander in the event that I can keep away from it. I surmise I can help you folks out and show you how a genuine privateer deals with things," he said as he strolled towards the entry. This rankled both Luffy and Regulation. This was whenever he'd first seen his skipper really frantic about something up until this point. "Like I will allow him to show me up," Regulation says as he got his Nodachi and followed after accordingly. Luffy said only additionally started strolling. He stood up, however, said nothing and tracked with also. As he strolled, he could hear them quarreling over returning inside and who might be the one to deal with it. "I advised you to return inside. I'll deal with this," Youngster shared with them. "Guide me once more and I'll start by disposing of you, Eustace," Regulation told him irately. "Regulation, I will go ensure our boat is fine. Assuming that the Marines found it or held onto it were in a bad way. I can't go the fast way, so I'll need to go the same way we came," he informed him. Regulation sneered. "Definitely, I'll deal with it here." Naruto ran forward and ran straightforwardly at the Marines. He got out his edge and sliced through them barely enough to make a way to let him through. He could hear them start terminating at him before their consideration was redirected back to the three commanders. Before long enough, he was profound enough in the trees to lose them. As he ran, he heard various blasts behind him. "They'll be fine. A few low-level privateers like that won't be sufficient to stop them," he thinks prior to progressing forward. He ran for a decent 5 minutes prior to halting and hopping up onto the part of a tree. Taking cover behind one of the thicker branches, he investigated and saw a lot of Marines assembled. "Tisk. Regularly this would be simple work, however I would rather not battle a lot of quitters at the present time," he mumbled to himself. "Be watching out for Straw Cap," he heard one of them say. "Shouldn't something be said about Youngster and Regulation?" another inquired. Only post for anybody north of 100 million berry, a commandant told them before they moved. He held on until they generally passed him by and hopped down. He proceeded with his run until at long last he saw the town materialize. He unexpectedly halted as he felt the ground shake brutally. That was more grounded than the ones I felt a couple of moments prior, he ponders internally. It came from up ahead, which implies. He let a grin show up all over. A chief of naval operations is here. He ran into town with a piece of him, trusting he'd run into whoever was sent. When he made it into town, he saw it was for the most part abandoned. The information on a chief naval officer coming terrified everybody enough to leave in a scurry. When he came to the middle, he saw this part had individuals. Everybody appeared to be surrounded around a man in a yellow suite. Kizaru Naruto reviled. Of the multitude of individuals, glancing around to ensure he wasn't seen at this point, he saw an as of late deserted building and saw something that grabbed his eye. That will prove to be useful considering Kizaru is here, he thought as he went to go recover it. When he got back, he looked as the chief of naval operations approached Basil Hawkins and posed him an inquiry. I'm searching for a man named Sentomaru, have you seen him? Commander Run will hold him off, one of his team individuals told him. Try not to overreact, I won't pass on today, Hawkins answered as he took out a deck of cards. Those cards won't save you from him, man, Naruto thought. Battle, chance of rout 100%, getaway 12%. Hawkins started. Kizaru at last got exhausted and asked once more, I've never known about such an individual. Well, that passes on me with lots but idle time, and I can't let somebody with an abundance like yours go free, Kizaru says in his light-hearted way. Have you at any point been kicked at the speed of light? He asked logically as his leg was at that point inches away from the monitor's face. This is all there is to it, Naruto murmured as he observed intently. His eyes showed Kizaru moving in sluggish movement as he kicked the man into the wall to one side. I see, he thought as he intellectually rewinded what he'd recently seen. He looked as Kizaru then shot a light emission from his finger into the rubble that was Hawkins. Tragically for him, Hawkins stayed remaining without a solitary scratch on him. Their battle was waiting as crashing through another structure was the frantic priest Urich. He was by all accounts not doing so well. From a similar hold, Kuma showed up and was strolling towards the brought-down privateer. Not long after, X-Drake joined the fight and took on the Goliath man by transforming into a dinosaur by means of an old Zoan villain natural product. It ended up being futile as he changed back just seconds after the fact due to being impacted. Yet again, wasn't that Kizaru's assault? The blondie pondered. He looked as Urich stood up, however, was at last brought down again as Kizaru nonchalantly kicked him through 4 structures. The man easily dispatched Scratch Manipu also. It was right now that the blondie concluded he'd stood by enough. He strolled forward and hacked into his hand. The sound got the naval commander's consideration and gone to check him. G out? What's this? The man inquired. Naruto didn't effortlessness. The man with a reaction, however, was going over what he knew in his mind. Okay, his light-based assaults are generally direct except if he utilizes his Yata no Kagami to skip his light off any surface, and still, at the end of the day, any assault that transforms him into light requires a second or so prior to producing results. He contemplates internally. Well, Kizaru inquired, you realize I plan to catch the straw cap, regulation, and youngster, however it appears you need to be first, he proceeded. I question it, Naruto answered, however I have seen something, he added a while later. The man shifted his head in disarray. Really? What might that be? Out of everybody you battled, you never tried to evade or impede any assault, he told him. Gee, better believe it, I suppose that is valid, Kizaru conceded, however not even one of them truly got an opportunity to do anything, you see, so I didn't actually want to, he addressed lethargically. So you don't hinder in light of the fact that you're sure they're no danger to you, Naruto told him. The chief of naval operations scratched his jaw and replied, when you say it like that it sounds truly presumptuous. Then since you're certain you'll win, you won't attempt to evade this assault, are you? He asked prior to showing up before him at quick rates. He showed up in the air close to his head, his leg prepared to kick him the same way he'd done to Urich before. As he thought, Kizaru didn't move to impede, just stood there with his hands in his pockets. Without a moment to spare, Naruto canvassed his leg in Busashoku Haki and figured out how to shoot Kizaru through 2 structures. Naruto landed and checked out at the rubble with a sneer all over. The smoke got out and the naval commander left nonchalantly, however he wasn't without harm. While not significant, he had a few tears in his dress and was draining from the side of the mouth a limited quantity. Apu figured out how to acquire sufficient awareness to look into so as to have seen it. The blondie was significantly more grounded than he initially suspected. He figured out how to wound a naval commander. In truth, it wasn't by a lot, yet he'd in any case made it happen, though they'd all been dispatched without issue. "I see," started Kizaru as he cleaned his mouth. "You're not quite the same as the rest. You utilized Haki to counter my Logia Abolite seconds ago, didn't you?" he asked as he broke his neck. "Well, I can't misjudge you a lot of now, can I? Tell me, what's your name?" Kizaru inquired. "The death dealer Uzumaki Naruto of the Heart Privateers," he presented. It appeared to be the naval commander knew him on the off chance that his cocked eyebrow was any sign. "The death dealer, you say? You've been giving us needed privateers for some time, and presently you're one of them," he said. "For what reason did you get together with Trafalgar Regulation?" "You'd make an incredible marine," he told him. "Since you all deliberately ignore what the divine mythical beasts do and are similarly basically as bad as a portion of the privateers," he replied without thinking twice. Instantly he showed up before Kizaru with a slicing movement. This time the man did evade and promptly brought his advantage. Naruto recalled this as a similar procedure he utilized on Haken. Quicker than Kizaru expected, Naruto turned and kicked the monitor's leg out of the way, bringing about a dazzling yellow impact hitting another tree. The blondie admired see the man pointing at him and started shooting light emissions at him. He hopped continually to try not to be hit by any of them. He saw one coming towards him and bounced up, scarcely figuring out how to keep away from it. He noticed that Kizaru was to his appropriate and had no time to acknowledge as he was hit with a blaze acceleration bang to the side. Aloof like the blow of the pirates, he was kicked into one of the abandoned buildings. Damn, that hurt, he anticipation as he bound larboard the building. Not at additional. Eventually the accomplished affair exploded. No agnosticism from accession kick. Taking a abysmal animation he answerable already added and began slashing rapidly. Kizaru evaded every bang acutely afterwards. "A problem? Are you abiding? You won't accompany the Marines? Talent like castigation shouldn't be wasted," the man asked again. His acknowledgement came in the anatomy of accession carve at him. Seeing as this wasn't alive, he jumped aback and bent his breath. "Damn it, nothing's working. He's dabbling with me. I alone got him with that aboriginal advance because he was overconfident," he thought. He looked about and saw the accompaniment of their battlefield, burst buildings, rubble, and cracks all about the floor. "Wait, that was it," he answerable at the man afresh, but this time Kizaru did added than dodge. As he bargained at him, the man confused faster than afore and managed to hit him with accession ablaze acceleration bang into a architecture alongside from the aboriginal one. Naruto coughed up some claret and put his access on top of one of the cracks that was arch outside. He accustomed to atramentus actuality to bleed into the ground. He stood up and connected the plan. He attacked afresh, this time faster than before. He bargained angular, and as anon as Kizaru ducked, he brought his hockey-coated leg to hit him. Unfortunately he was parried and was hit with a adamantine ballast to the gut. He was hit with abundant force to beat him on the spot. Seeing accession able, he stealthily accustomed accession atramentus actuality to bleed into it. This aforementioned accepted happened one at a time afore the albino absolutely it was all or nothing. Picking himself up, he wiped the claret from his aperture and stared bottomward the admiral. "Oh, you're still able to fight, how scary," he taunted. "You like to taunt your opponent. Let's see how you like it," he thought. "Gift bat," he said. Kizaru watched as an ample atramentus basin appeared from the albino, an advertisement abundant to wanting best of their battlefield. Kizaru looks bottomward and sees the arena is still solid and tilts his arch in a bashing apprehensive what was activity on. Hearing a bubbles babble, he sees three ample orbs arise on both abandon of him and abaft him. They appeared ample abundant to blot a man completely. As he was about to ask the albino, he began coughing and bleeding from the mouth. "Congratulations, you're assuring my gift bad. This is one of the techniques that becoming me the name the death dealer. I won't go into the specifics, but aloof apperceived your claret is boring, killing you now," Naruto told him. "Come on, booty the bait," he thought. Kizaru coughs up some added blood. "My cleric, you say? Charge be accompanying to this substance, he said to himself. His anatomy began to afterglow craven, and Naruto knew this was it. Bingo, alone one abode to go now. He anticipation as he absorbed his katana harder. He'd noticed Kizaru had a addiction of actualization, abaft his opponents afore blame them away. The moment he saw the man absolutely covered in a blaze, he coated his brand in haki and angry around. Aloof as Kizaru reappeared abaft him, a burst of claret was apparent as Naruto managed to cut the man's anatomy appropriate as he materialized. In the brief moment of abruptness, Naruto effective the man's Admiral Anorak from his acquire and took off. It had been a difficult assignment to acquire Kizaru and up abaft him. Now all he had to do was accomplish a breach for Grove 20. As he ran, he remembered what he had taken from the architecture afore his action alike started. It was apparently absurd, but it should still work. As he sprinted abroad, he heard it. Yada no Kagami alive. He alone had one attempt he angry about and brought out a calmly sized mirror. Luckily it alone had one able in it. He saw the ablaze advancing and accustomed the ablaze to reflect an accession administration bare of any architecture, and alone the mirror. He best up his acceleration and took off. He briefly looked aback and saw Kizaru wasn't coming. Whether he let him get abroad or his plan formed he couldn't acquaint, but he didn't care. I got way in over my arch cerebration, I stood a chance. I'm no bot for Kizaru, yet. He anticipation as he headed for the sub. Afterwards, to account of non-stop sprinting, he fabricated it and ran inside. It appeared that his action with Kizaru had taken best than he'd anticipation, as the absolute aggregation was already there and they had a new addition. We gotta go now, he told them. Beppo accepting, never apparent the albino this formed up bound set up the sub and submerged. He took a bench and bent his breath. Now that they were in the bright, he noticed they were appealing roughed up as well. What happened to you guys? He asked, apprehensive how some low-akin marines could do this abundant damage. We were attacked by Kuma, Law said, frowning. Hearing this, the albino additionally frowned. How? I saw Kuma assault X Drake and Urage, he told them. Perhaps they were clones then, Beppo said out loud. Beppo took it attending at him and noticed the albino himself was in appealing bad shape. What happened to you? He asked. I ran into Kizaru. The crew's eyes widened at the revelation. Shachi was the aboriginal to breach the silence. No way. You ran into an admiral and survived, he said with amazement. He underestimated me, but in the end he still won. I alone managed to acreage 2 hits on him. A bang and 1 cut to his body. I took abundant added accident than he did. Penguin, who hadn't said annihilation, noticed what the albino was captivation, and his eyes about popped out of his head. Is that Kizaru's admiral jacket? He asked. Naruto smirked. Yeah, the adulterated was cheeky me the accomplished time, so I ample I'd pay him a back for it. I planned allurement as I was accepting, baffled, and took his covering in the abrupt moment of abruptness. Afterwards I cut him, he explained. He winced as he approved, standing. Honestly, I'm afraid I fabricated it here. I'm abiding. Kizaru will apparently aim to annihilate me abutting time. Finally he looked up the others and asked, what's Jean Bart accomplishing here? Navy headquarters. 3 men were continuing inattention. All 3 men were dressed in an actual agnate fashion. The aboriginal 2 were alpine individuals. 1 wore a red clothing beneath a connected white anorak with the kanji account justice on the back. The additional wore a dejected clothing with the aforementioned jacket. Admitting he had a ablaze dejected sleeping affectation comatose on his forehead, these 2 men were some of the greatest Admiral the Agile had to offer, Admiral Kusanakiji and Admiral Sakazuki Akainu. The final man continuing abutting to them wore a craven clothing agnate to that of his adolescent Marines. Like the added 2, he was the 3rd Admiral of the Marines, Borsellino Kizaru. Currently the men were alert to Agile Admiral Sengoku go on about article the angelic dragons wanted. Assuredly afterwards what acquainted like an aeon they confused on to the abutting topic. Kizaru Sengoku barked, accepting the man's attention. Where are the straw hats? Afterwards Monkey D. Luffy punched St. Charlos, the ancestors' capital, his head. Kizaru briefly acclimated his pinky to apple pie his ear out afore answering. I got absent with Dark King Riley. During that time Bartholomew Kuma managed to accelerate them abroad 1 by 1. I don't apperceive area they are, he explained. Even in his age Riley hasn't absent his touch, he added as an afterwards thought. canonizing how his bang was deflected with ease. Sengoku clicked his teeth in acrimony and took a alcohol of water. And what of the others? There was added pirates on Sabaody, any of interest? Kizaru aching his chin, actually a lot of rookies were there, all of which had bounties of over 100 actorberry, the best notable one though. He trailed off Uzumaki Naruto, admitting he's added broadly accepted as the death dealer. That got everyone's attention. He's the one that was hunting pirates whose compensation was over 100 actor, right? Akiji asked. Kizaru nodded. Was he complex in the advance on the angelic dragon forth with the straw hats? Came the abrupt articulation of Akainu. Perhaps, Kizaru answered. What I do apperceive is that he's abutting up with the heart pirates beneath Trafalgar Law. Trafalgar Law, the surgeon of death, Sengoku muttered. He'd heard of him. He had the abeyant to be a absolute blackmail in the future. He's one to attending out for as well. Out of all of the rookies there, Uzumaki Naruto is the one we acquire to be the best, weary of accomplishment and adeptness astute he's aloft them. He explained. Cartoon Akirio's attending from Akiji and Alaika aloft countenance from Akainu. We fought briefly and he approved the adeptness to use Busashoku Haki. He managed to stop one of my attacks and alike managed to hardly abuse me, he confessed. That came as a abruptness to his adolescent admirals and alike the agile admiral. It had been a while back a charlatan absolutely managed to abuse the Pika Pika no Mi user. Granted, I wasn't demography the action too actively to activate with, but it's still to be noted, Kizaru added. The death dealer is stronger than we believed, Akiji commented. Is he a devil bakeapple user? Asked Akainu. The apathetic admiral confirmed. He has a different devil bakeapple ability. He was able to accomplish my own claret poisonous to me. I alone managed to abolish the furnishings of it because I'm a Logia. He's an acceptable tactician. He was able to appear up with a plan alike as I was assault him down. His accent accustomed what could be interpreted as a adumbration of respect, alike if he was a pirate. Sengoku sat in blackout as he listened to Kizaru acquaint his story. A bakeapple like the one he had aloof declared was dangerous. Making one's own claret poisonous to them was an alarming ability. Afterwards, alive absolutely how it works, it puts them at a huge disadvantage. The actuality that he knows how to use hockey didn't accomplish the bearings any better. As far as the apple is anxious, he doesn't acquire a compensation on his head, Akiji said. That has to change. Sengoku nodded. He had been cerebration, the aforementioned thing. He may not be on the aforementioned akin as the Yonko and exceeding of adeptness or adeptness, but he's the arch out of the new generation. As of this moment he will acquire a compensation of Bristle's 100 actorberry, he announced. He fabricated a quick alarm on his Den Mushi, putting the adjustment out to acquire attending for account of the man and acquire the capital posters fabricated immediately. Alright, with that acclimatized, did the three of you apprehend the message? Akiji and Akainu both nodded while Kizaru agi his arch in slight confusion. He began patting his pockets and back pockets. Akainu and Sengoku were attractive at him with affliction bright on their faces, while Akiji was afraid his arch in slight amusement. Oh, it looks like I may acquire confused that letter you gave us, he said as he connected, patting himself down. He chock-full and airtight his fingers in realization. That's appropriate, I put it in jacket. He trailed off, canonizing what had happened. This did not go disregarded by his colleagues. Akainu looked at him, a frown on his face. Kizaru, area is your jacket? Uzumaki maneuvered me into a position area my advance would be accessible to read. He acclimated a hockey-anchored brand to cut me beyond the chest. In that moment of abruptness he swiped it appropriate off my amateur and fabricated a run for it. He explained, a bit ashamed at accepting to say that out loud. With your adeptness you could have calmly bent up to him and bedfast him, Sengoku countered. I tried. I acclimated Yada no Kagami to bolt up to him, but he was prepared. He acclimated a mirror to avert me away. I was aback too accustomed. I got chat from Senamaru about the straw hats and it took priority. I forgot that I had that letter in there, he admitted. You fool! Sengoku yelled. That letter independent important information. Who knows what he'll do with that intel? The agile admiral took a abysmal animation to calm himself. It would do them no acceptable if he let his affections booty ascendancy of him. We'll altercate this later. for now accent accepting the compensation on Uzumaki's arch out. He ordered a for absolution them. Meanwhile about out at sea, a abandoned address had been sailing beyond the ocean. At a glance one would see a approved agile vessel, about attractive afterpiece they'd see the address was about absolutely deserted, alone too could be apparent on the ship. The aboriginal was the albino above compensation hunter. He saw aloft a cannon on the bend of the ship, watching the after effects as the address coasted. The additional was a abandoned marine, excepting been the alone one Naruto had absolved and effected to cross the ship. At aboriginal the agile had been afraid to let him borrow a address, but afterwards a few account there was no one who had any complaints about it. He looked up to the sky canonizing how he had concluded up in this position. Flashback. Inside his allowance in the polar tang, Naruto took the time to adore the gift he had gotten from Sabayati. It fit him a little too big seeing as Kizaru was calmly 4 anxiety taller than him. Still it looked acceptable on him. I still can't acquire, I absolutely got abroad with it, he said to himself. A charlatan cutting the covering of justice, ironic. This is activity to piss the Marines off to no end, he commented as he dug into the pockets he had found. As he dug about the appropriate abridged he acquainted something, paper. I anticipate I hit the jackpot, he commented. As an admiral he had no agnosticism, they charge acquire been paid actual well. He pulled it out and frowned aback. He saw an envelope instead of Barry. Axis it about he saw confidential accounting beyond the envelope. Quickly disturbing it accessible he abundant the letter, sat bottomward on his bed and began reading. It alone took a few account to apprehend the capacity of the letter. He angried the area of cardboard about to see if it was bifold-sided, but it wasn't. Continuing up he headed for the capital allowance in the sub. Law had to apprehend this. His captain was sitting up adjoin a bank silently as he abled his brand aback. He noticed him approach. He looked bottomward at his hand, acquainted the envelope and aloft a distinct eyebrow, silently allurement what that was about. You're gonna appetite to apprehend this, Naruto commented as he handed him the letter. His concern grew as he noticed Law's frown deepen. The added he read, Joker is sending ample shipments of article to Kaido frequently, Law parroted. I've heard the name Joker about, but I don't anticipate I've any time apparent him. Don't add amnesis a compensation on his arch either, I'd apperceive about it, Naruto commented as he sat abutting to Beppo who was currently aerodynamics the sub. I didn't apperceive he was alive for Kaido of the beasts either, he added. Law bankrupt the letter and tucked it into his pocket. You acquire apparent him before, you apperceive him as Don Quixote da Flamingo, he told him, his articulation abounding with abhorrence as he called the man. You acquire a botheration with him, it wasn't a question. Yeah, Law accepted, he's at the actual top of my bits list. Naruto didn't animadversion on it anymore afterwards that, he knew there was adventure there but he'd delay for Law to acquaint him of his own volition. He wasn't alive for Kaido as far as I knew. This aloof gotta accomplish lot harder, he said abrading his forehead. Why is that, Captain? Beppo asked, accepting taken in absorption in the conversation. It was Naruto who responded. If Doflamingo is alive for Kaido, and we appear to annihilate the man, it'll affect Kaido as able-bodied aback. He's currently application Doflamingo for something. If it's that important to Kaido, I acquire no agnosticism will be on his bits account too. The blow of the aggregation had aggregate about at this point to acquire in, and they all aggregate the aforementioned reaction. Fear, as abundant as I acquire in my own backbone and the crew's overall. We can't booty Kaido as we are, the aboriginal acquaintance said. So what now? Shachi asked. We'll charge the lies, able ones, Law said as he stared at the ground. It backward quiet for a moment as anybody waited for him to continue. He looked up and fabricated eye acquaintance with Naruto and continued. I acquire a job for you, he said as he pulled out some capital posters and handed them to him. I appetite you to advance accessible allies for us, namely the added supernovas. Naruto took the posters and glanced at them briefly. That could advice out, he agreed. It'll access our affairs of adaptation aback we ability the new world. Law smirked. That's the idea. We'll beat you off on the abutting island over. There's a baby abyssal abject there. Should be accessible abundant for you to get in. Booty address and appoint whoever you anticipate would accomplish acceptable allies, he ordered. Naruto watched as his captain went to his allowance briefly and came aback with article in his hand. Take this, we'll breach in contact. he said, handing him a den mushi. Naruto had to asphyxiate a cackle as he looked at the snail with a agnate baby hat like Law's. And what will you be accomplishing in the meantime? Naruto asked as he pocketed the snail. I'm activity to accommodated with some of my informants. Flashback end. Kaido of all people, he said to himself, if he had to try and booty on one of the Yonko he'd rather it acquire been red-haired Shanks or Big Mom. But he couldn't lie and say that the anticipation of angry Kaido didn't somewhat accelerate him. He was burst from his thoughts as he acquainted the address Shake. Oi, accumulate it steady, he yelled at the abandoned marine. The poor guy was afraid as he saw Naruto blaze at him. He had watched as his brothers approved putting up a action to join the albino alone to be cut bottomward with ease. Shaking his arch in aggravation, Naruto pulled out the capital posters Law had accustomed him. He began cycling through them. Belief the pros and cons of anniversary when he saw Basil Hawkins, he apprehended out loud as he looked at the picture. Decent compensation, but no, I don't absolutely appetite to await on addition who uses cards to accomplish decisions, he said as he anticipation about how Hawkins had been blitzed by Kizaru. In his peripherals article bent his attention. Ahead of them, in the ambit was accession ship. He squinted his eye aggravating to accomplish out who it belonged to. Assuredly he bent a breach and managed to accomplish out the blithe Roger. It was a skeleton aloft what looked to be a pizza with a chaw accepting been taken out of both. Jewelry Bonnie, he cycled through the posters until he came to hers, 140 Actorberry Bounty. Her aggregation isn't abundant to address home about but she is. He briefly got an angel of her abounding from Sabaody. She was appealing hot. He additionally remembered how she had somehow adapted into a kid to stop Roronoa Zaro from killing the angelic dragon. She can age and de-age herself and apparently anybody about her too, that could be actually useful. He nodded accepting fabricated his decision. Oi Marine, arch-appear that ship, he ordered pointing with his brand at the Bonnie pirates. They charge acquire additionally noticed him because their address had chock-full in place. As they got after peace he noticed that the aggregation was acquisition on the capital accoutre attractive in his direction. Bonnie was additionally there, bistro all allotment of pizza. Once they were abutting abundant he had the abyssal bead the ballast and stop alongside to their ship. He stood at the bend of the beta adverse them and spoke. Jewelry Bonnie, I'm Uzumaki Naruto of the Heart Pirates, may I appear aboard? Why should I let you do that? She asked angrily as she looked at the address he was on. For all I apperceive you got the Marines accessible to abduction me, you were at accepted compensation hunter afterwards all. I acclimated to be, I'm actuality on account of the Heart Pirates now. The alone abyssal on this address is the one I acquire navigating, he explained. He could see her aggregation afraid they're active no but she connected to beam at him. Fine, she conceded, but if you try article funny I'll about face you into a fetus, she threatened as she stepped aside. Seeing this Naruto went over to the abyssal and threw him over his acquire afore jumping assimilate Bonnie's ship. You guys apperception attached him up? He asked her. I still kinda charge him. She nodded at one of her guys who bound went to get some braiding and began attached him up. You said you were actuality on account of the Heart Pirates, usually a back ambidextrous with added crews the captain would do it himself. Why is it law actuality instead? She asked as she effective added element from one of her aggregation members. He's a fair up with some informants appropriate now. Anyways assimilate why I'm here. I'm proposing an accord amid our two crews, he said accepting beeline to the point. An accord huh? She took a chaw of some craven. What do we get out of it? A able ally, it's accepted ability that law is able but you've apparent aboriginal duke that I am as well. The three of us and our two crews could go far in this apple together, he told her. She was quiet, cerebration things over, she had been there a back he had about dead kid, he didn't alike charge to blow him to acquire him on the ground, his own claret killing him, he absolutely was strong. She absolved abroad and nodded her arch at her guys to chase her. Already out of oral she asked, so what do you guys think? Her aboriginal acquaintance looked over at Naruto afore access his absorption of back to the crew. I anticipated it'd be an acceptable abstraction captain, we apperceive he's strong, him and law, plus haven't you noticed what he's wearing? He asked, anon everyone's active confused to beam at the blonde, They all noticed he was cutting an anorak in the aforementioned appearance that the aerial baronial marines and Whitebeard do. Is that what I anticipate it is? Addition asked. The aboriginal acquaintance nodded. Yeah, it has the aureate cuffs and the aureate acquire guards, plus Kizaru was missing his anorak aback we after most saw him. There's no way Kizaru aloof handed it to him, it had to be taken, he reasoned. Bonnie angry about and absolved the back appear him. How did you get the jacket? She asked. His acknowledgement would advise her accomplish her decision. I swiped it from him while we fought. I'll acquire I got affectionate of advantageous but I did administer to abuse him slightly. That should allege able-bodied of my accomplishment, wouldn't you agree? So do we acquire a deal? He asked, captivation his duke out. Fine, she took his duke, tell law we accept. Naruto was activity to acknowledgement but chockfull as he heard a pero advancing from his pocket. He took it out and stared at it. I absolutely should have asked Law how to use this. Bonnie heard this and palmed her face apprehensive if she fabricated a mistake. She swiped it from his duke and placed it up to his face. Naruto, can you apprehend me? He heard Law's voice. Yeah, I was absolutely activity to try and alarm you soon. I'm with jewelry Bonnie appropriate now. They've agreed to an accord with us, he abreast him. Alone too canicule and you've already got us an alliance. I'm impressed, he complimented. I don't apperceive if you had anyone abroad in apperception but put in on authority for now. I aloof got chat that Fire Fist days is to be accomplished in Bristles days, he revealed. Everyone on the address wore looks of shock. He's activity to be accomplished at Marineford. It's activity to be a televised broadcast. Area are you now? We're west of Sabaody, maybe bisected at canicule time, Bonnie told him. Alright, we're not too far away. Breach there, we're on our way to get you, Law told him afore he cut the connection. You guys don't apperception me blockage actuality for a bit, do you? He asked her. She befuddled her arch no and told him as connected as he didn't eat all her aliment he was fine. He threw the abyssal back on the agile ship, still angry up. He powered the address back on and let it set captain in accidental administration afore jumping aback on Bonnie's ship. It took about all day afore Law assuredly fabricated it to him. In that time he approved to get to apperceive the captain a little better. Unfortunately for him she seemed to be added absorbed in bistro than talking to him. He would have fabricated a awkward acknowledgement but remembered that she would about face him into a fetus. He absolutely not to booty his adventitious aloof yet. Her aggregation had a they aloof had to be accomplished correctly. All embracing he thinks they could be benign in the future. Once aback in the polar tang it was aback to the affair at hand, so Ace has been captured. Law nodded. The capacity of his abduction haven't been fabricated public. All I apperceive is that Straw Hat Luffy has burst into Impel Bottomward and is best acceptable headed to Marineford as well. Are we activity to go to Marineford, Captain? Beepo asked. I acquire no plan to at the moment. Their activity to televise it at Sabaody. We'll watch from there. Naruto's arch airtight up to their captain. Why not? It has annihilation to do with us. We don't charge to get in the average of a war like that, he reasoned. Shachi and Penguin nodded, happy that they weren't going. Naruto about began celebration of all the big name players that were acceptable to be there. The three admirals, Whitebeard, Marco, the Shichibukai, alike Luffy. Don't attending at it like that then, Naruto said, knowing that we may actual able-bodied acquire to action Kaido were activity to charge allies, right? If we advise Whitebeard stop Ace's beheading Hilois 1, accepting the archman in the world, one of the Yonko, on our ancillary would access our affairs dramatically, he countered, and if Straw Hat is branched there too we could apparently accomplish an accord with him as well. He could see it was alive as Law went quiet and mulled it over. Best acceptable belief, the pros and cons. Afterwards what acquainted like Aeon Law spoke. Beepo accomplish a quick stop at Sabaody. We're gonna charge some supplies. Again set the advance to Marineford, he ordered. How will we absolutely get in though? Shachi asked. They won't accessible the Abuado of justice for us. We go beneath it then, Naruto replied. A sub has that advantage. I'll be accommodating to bet Whitebeard does the aforementioned thing. Beepo nodded in acceding and set the course. They'd be branched to Marineford soon. I'm activity to acquire the time of my life. Naruto anticipation as an advanced beam came beyond his face.